The first thing you will need to do to get started with this is the first step that I take on a lot of projects that I get involved with, and that is research. Research is extremely important to be able to understand processes and to also get a grasp on everything that you're going to need to be able to get it done. So I really cannot stress how important research is. Google is a thing now, and it can be your best friend. Google may also someday be our overlord, so show your respect now. Now, once you've found a recipe that you like, read it. Go through the whole thing, check out the ingredient list, check out the directions, preparation, all of that. Once you have a basic understanding of, what it takes and how it all comes together, you will be much better in the long run. Mental preparation is just as important as physical preparation in the kitchen, because once you get the ball rolling, especially with confections, you can't stop it. There is no pause button. Lastly on this thought, once you've read the recipe you like, consider that to be only one of many viable recipes that you can find, and find at least 3 more. Figure out what they share, roughly, and figure out what they do differently. Use common sense and deductive reasoning to hobble the best version of an average between them and tweak to your specific taste. Also, very important, read the comments. If a recipe has a lot of review, read them all, or generally speaking, most of them. It can shed a lot of light on common mistakes and issues for first-timers. Now that you have your research phase complete, it is time to get down to business. The first step to making any edible medical grade is to decarboxylate the flour. This activates the constituent chemicals within the plant and increases potency of the edible. There are many different ways that you can do this process, and the 2 that I have tried, this recipe being the second, is either a 200-degree oven for 2 hours or a 250-degree oven for 27 minutes, respectively. Again, do your research, get many opinions, and put together a reasonable average of consensus. This is around 2 ounces of trim from 4 Space Cakes clones. It doesn't need to be all that finely broken down at this point, because it will become frangible after decarboxylation. I also added a small amount of ground up flour, just because. Why not? Again, this time around, I went with the 250-degree oven for 27 minutes. It was also shown to be covered with foil in that research that I did, so I did that, but I didn't seal it completely all the way around, and I also folded it over to vent on the sides, just for good measure. Okay, this is the herb after it's cooled down from the oven. As you can see, after simply picking up small handfuls and gently crushing it with my hand, it reduces it down to a much finer sized particle. Smaller particle size equals more surface area. More surface area means more contact with the medicine, and more therefore will transfer into the fat. In a double boiler, sorta, I melted 1 pound, around 2 cups of unsalted butter, and not pictured was an additional cup or a cup and a half of coconut oil. I discovered that I didn't quite have enough butter in the end because I didn't quite think it all the way through, so I did have to add some coconut oil, but that is perfectly okay to mix coconut oil and butter. Now, while your fats are melting down into a liquid, it's a good thing to, at this point, go over everything to make sure that you've got everything that you're going to need. I did have all this laid out in the beginning, but this is a quick overview of what I used for the recipe. Please note that even after all the digging I did beforehand, I still wasn't confident that using sweetened condensed milk was going to work out well for me, so I decided not to use it. Also, I overestimated my yield and only needed to use the 2 light blue silicone molds and the dark blue ice cube tray. I thought I was going to have way more, but the molds ended up being, I don't know the volume of each, individual cavity on the light blue mold, so obviously it was more than I expected. Okay, back to the stove. Once the water is boiling in your double boiler, you can reduce the heat a bit. By now your butter and coconut oil have fully liquefied, and you are ready to perform the magical step where medicine and culinary art slam together in a cosmically epic win for mankind. Take your decarb flour and mix it into the fat, is basically what I mean. At this point, for the next 3 to 4 hours, every 20 or so minutes, you're going to check on the pan, gently stirring the mixture and making sure your double boiler still has water in the bottom. Do not let your double boiler run out of water. I know from experience, and it is no bueno. Nice! Whew, man, it's been 4 hours, but your house smells amazing, and you're nice and toasted yourself from the well-deserved bowl break. Next, you will take your mixture and strain it out to remove the plant matter from the fats. Using 2 layers of cheesecloth as a filter, pour the contents of the top pan into a container to hold the now medical-grade butter. Using a rubber spatula to make sure you scrape out every last bit of herb and fat, dry out the upper pan with a paper towel to get rid of any of the remnants, and return it on top of the lower pot. Again, making sure the water level is good. Don't let it get too low. Once you've been sure to wring out and squeeze every last drop you can from the cheesecloth bundle, you can toss it. I guess some people may save it. I'm not sure what they would do with it. I don't. Return the now clarified butter and oil into the upper pan and take a deep breath. Maybe another puff too. Phase 2 is about to commence. I pre-measured 4 cups of mini marshmallows so they were ready and on call. 4 cups is basically the whole bag. I did reserve a few for later and for snacking. Because I got high. Anyway, not shown, I did take about a half a cup of the clarified butter and put it off to the side for a later step. Throw those bad Larrys into the oil and just be patient. I added them slowly at first, but once I saw how they were behaving, I realized it didn't really matter and just added them all sort of roughly at the same time. Again, over the next few minutes, just keep an eye on it, stirring occasionally. You will see them all begin to melt and combine into one weird super mallow. But do not be alarmed, it has not gained sentience yet, and if it did, it would think you're pretty neat. Anyway, moving forward, while your new best friend and roommate Super Mallow is being formed from the primordial goo, as it were, this is a perfect time to get your drizzle ready. Take that half cup of reserved can of butter and add it to an equal or slightly greater amount of chocolate peanut butter spread. Mix this up in a bowl or right in the same measuring cup, and be sure to mix it until it is nice and smooth and you have a nice, consistent, kind of runny, drizzly mixture. Okay, now you are on the home stretch, and this is where it all comes together, literally. Slowly add in your preferred mix of chocolate chips and other tasty morsels. I would suggest doing this step a little at a time, a handful at a time, just to ensure that you don't lose too much heat in the process of stirring in the new morsels, which are still at room temperature, because of thermodynamics and all of that. Once all of your morsels are in the pan, grab a whisk, the one you already had waiting right next to you, right there, because you were mentally and physically prepared for this adventure, right? Okay. And start whisking the mixture vigorously until everything starts to smooth out and come together in a heavenly mixture. Again, whisk and whisk and whisk until all the lumps of mallow are dissolved and everything is nice and velvety, and just seeing it makes you tear up because the universe is friggin' beautiful, man, and we take for granted that beauty, and it's real. And are you stirring it, or is it stirring you? I digress. Find a reliable pouring method. I used a large iced tea style pitcher. It was plenty big enough to hold all of the liquid fudge, and it has a nice well-defined spout on the cover. Slowly and as carefully as you can, hover just above the mold cavities and slowly, calmly pour the mixture. A good tip is to gently jiggle the vessel you're pouring from to keep the flow consistent, and to pull back and tilt the pitcher back just before you think it's full. The mixture is going to settle, and secondarily, if you overpour anywhere later on, you can use a flat scraper or offset spatula to maneuver the excess over to any of the other cavities that may need topping off. Lastly, before moving on to the cool down, hold the corners of the molds and give them a gentle but vigorous jiggle. This vibration will release any trapped air bubbles at the bottom of the molds and also ensure your final product is consistent. Also, you will notice where those reserved mallows went. I had a little fun and changed up the look by accessorizing the fudge. You can just about add anything you like: nuts, dried fruit, sprinkles, colored sugar crystals. Sky's the limit, and these will get you high enough to reach it. So that's it, guys. After you've poured the molds, move them into your freezer. Again, notice the pre-planning and making sure I had the space I needed to accommodate the molds. As an old instructor of mine used to say, proper planning prevents poor performance. These would be cool and fully set in about an hour. The last step before bagging in a freezer Ziploc and storing in the fridge is objectively the fun part. Remove all of your fudge cubes from their chilly prisons and lay them all flat according to how you want them to be presented. Then with a small teaspoon, stir your drizzle mixture up a bit, and then in whatever way you want, splash, splatter, rain, or drench your fudge cubes in the tasty drizzle mixture. I drizzled the nice ones, I drenched the other ones, because those are for me. Thanks for watching. I hope this answered any questions you may have about getting into making homemade medical-grade snacks and treats. If you have any further questions or comments, please share them down below, and I'll get back to them as soon as I possibly can. As a final note, this presentation is in no way meant to demonstrate the correct or by-the-book recipe. I'm not saying you should do exactly as I did. However, if you were to, I think you will like the results. This is just to show you that it is approachable and to give you some insight on the process I use to get really good results in my medicated